Hi, this is Drew Tignanelli. This is our August 2023 update. That means the great day has already passed, Michael.
Yes, not at the time we're shooting this. We're still in the lead up to the great day.
That's true.
And for those who don't know, the great day is July 31st, the year of the birth of the founder, Mr.
There you go.
Tignanelli here.
Yeah, Chris O'Shea always said that his wife was really smart. She didn't get mad at Chris for ever forgetting her birthday because she never let him forget her birthday. She just told him. So I don't let people forget my birthday. I just tell them, so
Absolutely.
nobody forgets.
Well, happy birthday in advance.
Anyway, we're here and markets are continuing to try to move higher. They've done a pretty good job so far this year. But there's still a lot of question as to whether we're in a new bull market or not, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And like we've said before, we only really get to know that after the fact when we look back and say, oh yeah, that was a bull market or that was a bear market or whatever that was. But markets have moved higher despite a very hawkish Fed. At the time we're shooting this on July 26th. Later today, we're expecting another Fed announcement. Most people are expecting the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates by another 0.25%. We're sitting at 5.25%, which is same place interest rates were in 2006 and most of 2007. In recent times, interest rates have been as high as 6.5% back in 2000. So we're not in historic interest rate areas. This is just part of the normal Fed cycle.
It was more historic, Mike, when Fed rates were down to zero.
Right.
Even during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, when we had deflation, the Federal Reserve had interest rates on Treasury bills and so forth at 1% and 2%. They never got to zero. You never had negative interest rates during the Great Depression. Last 10 years were abnormal. Where we are today is actually relatively normal for our country.
Yep, absolutely. So one of the things that does stand out, though, when talking about the Federal Reserve is that they've they're pursuing inflation with a kind of a trifecta of a fight. As we've been talking about, they've been raising rates, but they've also been doing things to reduce, if you think of the economy as like a big bowl and there's so many dollars in the bowl. Well, what the Federal Reserve does is they do different things to take some of the dollars out of the bowl so the dollars can't even move around in the bowl set economy. So one of the things they've been doing is something that they call quantitative tightening. Now, we heard about quantitative easing for a very long time. And now the new word is quantitative tightening. And what does that mean? It basically means that bonds that they had been issuing to get money out into the markets, they're now retiring those bonds and pulling that money back out of the market. So, markets have been up, but at the same time, you have all of this pressure from the Fed that we're all concerned about in different ways.
Well, the one thing that I know, Mike, is that the Fed has been pretending for at least 30 years that they know what they're doing. And they've proven to be wrong, in my opinion, too mernany times. Greenspan created more messes than you can imagine. I believe it was the whole fault for the 2008 crises. Bernanke doing quantitative easing allowed our country to go from $3 or $4, $5 trillion of debt in 2000 up to 32 trillion. We went tenfold in debt during that 20-year period of time. No one ever had grown our country's debt as much as these guys have in the last 20 years. And it's because Bernanke opened up quantitative easing where the Federal Reserve would buy the bonds of the United States government. And now here comes Jeremy Powell, and he's telling us for 2 years there's no inflation. He's doing quantitative easing, and all of a sudden he goes, oh my gosh, Mike, there's inflation. I got to do quantitative tightening, and I got to raise interest rates to the moon because I'm the great inflation fighter. I mean, it's hard to take them seriously. I mean, I think they do a good job.
Let's talk about where we are and where we've been. So As of today,
Trying to change the topic, aren't you?
I like facts.
All right, go ahead, give us some facts. Give
So
us facts.
the June inflation rate, which is the most recent number we have at the time of shooting this, is now back down to 2.97%. You know, Fed targets 2%. They're almost there, and frankly, anyway. But historically, it's actually exactly 1 year from the highest inflation we had in recent times, which was up to 9.06%. So, you know, in exactly 1 year, we've gone from 9 down to, call it 3.
But you know, the point you're making is that they finally did what they were supposed to do, which is start to tighten so that inflation would come down. But now they're continuing this incessant fight against inflation, just like they consisted that there was no inflation a year and a half ago. I think
Drew's
where they're at
referring
right now
to
is
is
perfectly fine.
oversteerage.
What's that?
You're referring to oversteerage, the fact that they oversteered on the way into inflation, and now we're worried they're going to oversteer on the way out of inflation.
I have no clue what they're doing, in my opinion. It's just my opinion.
Well, I'll send Biden the message that you're ready to be appointed.
There you go. I don't want to be appointed. I just want them to appoint somebody like Paul Volcker who actually knew what he was doing.
Yep.
You know? Anyway, the point of the matter is, I think the bond market is healthier today than it has been in many years. And that's good news, because now we should see the 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, do what it traditionally has done for many a year for people in retirement. So I think that's a positive thing that's going on now. But anyway, let's move on to some financial planning topics.
So the other big news in financial planning at the time of shooting this video is, I got to give a little background. So a couple of years ago, they made some pretty big law changes. And one of the major areas they changed is what happens when you inherit an IRA account from someone. So most commonly, it's your parent dies, they had an IRA account, you now inherit it. Well, what used to happen is, just like your parents did, you would go to a chart, and the chart would say, okay, you're this old, we think you're going to live this many more years, you know, take the dollars in the thing divided by this, and that's what you need to take out this year, and next year do it again, and next year do it again, and you just took out this portion every year. But a couple of years ago, they changed that, and Congress implemented this thing called the 10-year rule, which basically said you have 10 years to get the money out of the account. Well, they didn't really put a lot of detail in the thing, so the thing came out, and everybody went, oh, we can wait 10 years, and at the end of the 10th year, we'll just take it all out then if we want to. Well, the IRS came and said, no, that's not what we think. We need more guidance. So for the past 2 years, they have given a waiver of a penalty to anybody who didn't take out the RMD, because they're under the impression that they have 10 years to wait to do it. And they just announced that in 2023, this year, they're going to be giving the waiver again. So if you have an inherited IRA that you inherited within the last, was it 2 years?
3 years, 2020, 21, 22, those years are deferred.
You have another year to decide, well, do I want to take some out anyway, because I don't want to take it all out in bigger chunks later, or do I want to go ahead and wait? And, you know, based on your individual tax plan, it's going to dictate which one of those solutions makes sense for you.
Yeah, they're just making it more complicated again, and giving the financial consult a good reason to be there for our clients, because I thought they made it simple until they came up with this rule. So you need people who stay at top of this stuff. It keeps changing, so that's a good one.
There's another big change, right, Drew? What kind of big change?
What's that?
There's the other big change we were going to talk about, which is the change that's coming up for how catch-up contributions are handled.
And so people who are in a 401k plan and they're over 50 years of age, they have the ability to put in a catch-up contribution, which is basically $7,500 And it's only if you're over 50 into your 401k. Don't worry about the catch up on the IRAs. We're talking about the 401ks. And also next year starts this new quirky little catch up, which is age 60, 61, 62, and 63. Now, don't ask me why a person needs a catch up for 4 years and only those 4 years. If you're 64, you can't do it. And if you're 59, you can't do it. But when you're 60, 61, 62, and 63, you can add a little bit more money even. I think it's another 2,500 or something ridiculous like that. I can't make this stuff up, Mike. You know,
Just memorize it.
Anyway, here's the point. These catch-up contributions used to be that you could put them into either your traditional or your Roth 401k. Well, now they're coming and they're saying, if you made 145,000, now don't ask me why 145,000 is such a key number, but it is. It's a very important number. 145,000 at your company the year before, you can only do your catch-up contribution into Roth 401k. That's the after tax, meaning that they want you to pay taxes on it immediately. You know, there's a lot of media buzz about this, as if this is like the government is telling us to do this horrible thing, you know, and I don't think the government should tell you which one you should do. First of all, let's get that straight. But actually what they're going to do is they're going to actually do a good thing for about 90% of the people who make over 145,000, because most people don't understand the power of the Roth 401k. They don't understand the power of the Roth IRA. Roth is what you should be thinking to yourself.
Drew's
Roth.
never gotten a tattoo, but if he did, it would say Roth IRA.
Here, let's just explain real quick the difference between the Roth and the traditional. When you put your $10,000 in the traditional, you get to say, hey, I don't have to pay taxes on that. Let's say you're in a really high tax bracket. Let's say that's $4,500. You don't have to pay tax on it. But the Roth, you put the $10,000 in, they say you got to give us that $4,500 in tax. Okay, it doesn't sound like a good deal. But what happens with the Roth is if 20 years later it's $100,000, you get to withdraw the $100,000 out tax free. And if it's the traditional, it grows to $100,000. You get to pay taxes on the full $100,000. Okay. Now people always say to me, Mike, when you go into retirement, you got less income, so you're not going to be in this higher tax bracket. That ain't the way the tax laws work anymore.
Yeah, you have a lot of things that trigger at much lower levels.
Yeah. Let's just talk about the one for a lot of our clients who live in Maryland. Okay. You live in Maryland and you're married and you made $149,999. You paid $1,750 less, Mike, than the guy who made $150,001. $1, Mike, loses $1,750 in tax liability that you now have to pay, that guy who made $2 stinking less than you did not have to pay. The tax law is littered with this stuff. Absolutely. The IRMA surcharge, you're single, okay? You make $92,000. Another guy makes $92,001, let's say. And then the IRMA one changes. So I'm just using a general number. It's in this ballpark, 92,000. You make 92,001, and all of a sudden you get to pay an extra $90 a month on your Medicare Part B premium. The tax law is littered with this kind of stuff. So you think, and I just talked to you earlier about how our country went from 3 trillion in debt to 33 trillion in debt. Do you really think that they're going to be able to deal with all that debt without saying to you, oh, you know, we need a little more money, Mike. We need a little more money, Mike. You know, Roth, understand that the bird in hand traditional is not as beneficial as the two in the bush with the Roth. Take the Roth and run, and don't worry about the one you let get away right now.
Now, in
Did I
that,
explain that well enough?
I think you made it your point well enough, though I'm still waiting for you to get the Roth tattoo. So in that conversation, we talked a little bit about Social Security, and we're also talking about the U.S. debt and things of that nature. And one of the things that tends to be a common theme among clients, especially those kind of in the years right before taking Social Security, is this concern that the funding of Social Security isn't there and that you're not going to get it. So this week, or this past quarter in our commentary, Graham wrote a piece talking about what happened during the Reagan era when Social Security was actually running into trouble. And I'll kind of summarize it by saying, effectively, back then, if you were 45 and over, you didn't get affected by any of the changes. They pushed those changes down onto the people that at the time were 45 and younger. And more likely than not, that's still what's going to happen. I mean, Drew, you were saying that, hey, you know, you're talking to the people that print the money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Social Security is run by the people that print the money, you know?
Yeah.
You know, as far as I know, Argentina and the Soviet Union, whose finances have always been a mess for years and years. As far as I know, they have never defaulted on a payment to their senior citizens. They've never lowered them, et cetera, et cetera. Normally what happens is they try to inflate it away. So yeah, they're still making the payments, but the inflation adjusted value of those pensions get inflated away. But they never have to say to their people, hey, I'm not going to make those payments for you, because, you know, senior citizens are the strongest voting group in the country. Nobody is going to tell the senior citizens that you're going
to the most
take
wealth for campaign donations, and
they're also one of the largest campaign donors also there, you know, too. So,
let's talk about who's running Social Security. So there's today, ironically, right as we were getting ready to shoot this video, I was looking for something online about Social Security, and I see that President Biden, for all of our Maryland clients and our Maryland expats out there, President Biden has named a new director of the Social Security Administration, and it's none other than your own Martin O'Malley. So if you haven't seen it on the news already.
He was such an economically wise governor of Maryland, so why wouldn't you appoint him to the head of the Social Security Administration? He also had incredible presidential aspirations, and he came that close, Mike, that close.
That close.
That's the amount of votes that he got. That's how close he got. Anyway, that's not funny. We wish Martin the best at running the Social Security Administration, and I think we're finished for now before we get ourselves in any more trouble than what we already are.
Sounds good.
All right. This is Drew Tignanelli saying God bless.